just another way to get it. So if I can remember what I'm doing here, I will, as usual, share a presentation, a PowerPoint. Let's see. There we go. Share content. And there it is. So can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and since everybody knows me, I'll skip the introduction slides and go right to the first one. So Brood-X cicadas, the class of 2021. Definitely coming to a tree near you. I was told in a symposium about the middle of last month that they will probably start appearing about May 12th. That's what a researcher that held the symposium is expecting, and the ODNR agrees with that, and it will probably last through the end of June. Of course, that also depends on the birds, because the birds love cicadas. And in fact, there have been some broods in past years that have been completely wiped out shortly after their emergence because of birds and other small creatures going after them for a meal. So there are currently 13 broods, but the numbering is 1 through 30, and that's why. So people confuse this all the time, and here's the difference. People call them locusts. They are not locusts. Locusts look like what you see on the right. They are a member of the same family as grasshoppers, and they are very destructive to crops and very destructive to fruit trees. Cicadas, what you see on the left, very different looking creature, very different habits.
They're actually very pretty.
They are. They can be very pretty, like this one in this picture, with the black and turquoise coloring. Now, there are some other myths that they kill trees, they destroy crops, which I just mentioned, they bite or sting, and have poisonous stings. None of that is true, with the caveat that if one or more decides to lay their eggs in a sapling tree, it can very definitely kill it. More than likely will, because saplings don't have very many branches, and most female cicadas have 100 or more eggs to lay. So yeah, they don't destroy crops. Cicadas do not even have mouths for eating. They do not eat when they're above ground. Once they've turned into an adult, no mouth. So they are not able to bite, and they do not have stingers, and so also are not poisonous or venomous, however you want to look at it. Now, some facts about them. Cicada nymphs, which is what are under the ground for the 17 or 13 years, depending on the brood, they aerate the soil around trees and bushes. That's very good for the trees and the bushes. When they are above ground, they provide food, as I mentioned, for many bird and small animal species. Besides birds, skunks, Possums, raccoons like them for food, and their emergent shells and their shells that they shed when they're below ground and their dead adult bodies provide the soil around trees and bushes with nutrients, the main one being nitrogen. So they are, in a sense, just like any other organic matter that provides natural fertilization. They also provide a natural tree pruning, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And I will add, because I saw an awful lot of this online, are used by jewelry makers as specimens. And if you look at this piece on the left, that's got enough jade and gold in it that probably costs some serious dough. Now, some more facts on the cicadas in general. There are 3 species of 13-year cicadas and 4 species of the 17-year, of which Brood X is one of those. Now, some overlap in their emergence years, the different broods, and it depends on what their geographic locations are, their geographic regions where they exist. There are a couple of oddballs. Brood 9 is the only one that appears completely west of the Mississippi River, and it's not a particularly big one. It's only in part of 3 states. Brood 7 only appears in northwest New York State, and it is the smallest brood. Only covers a handful of counties. Now, Brood 10 that we see here in Columbus is the largest brood and appears in Ohio and east and to the Midwest. And we'll see a map of that in a minute here. I will mention too, these are not the same as seasonal cicadas that we get every year. They are a completely different species. As I mentioned, the adults do not eat. That's when they're in the above ground stages. But I will also mention they were themselves eaten by Native Americans and some pioneers. And I mean raw. They would just take them, split them open, and eat them. The Native Americans loved them. That was like a delicacy to them. And I guess it was something that was picked up by some of the early pioneers in some of the areas in the Northwest Territory. So this is where Brood X will emerge. And we've got a illustration here of one 3-inch wingspan, 2.5-inch length. And the one thing about this is this shows Georgia. Georgia's kind of suspect. I haven't really found anything as far as a lot of them appearing in Georgia. And again, there is overlap here between Brood X and some other broods, which we will see. But this is basically their range. And a lot of this, well, I won't say, I'll save that. But this is their range. So now in Ohio, what we are going to see this year, and I've circled Franklin County, Brood X is the orange here. That's what we'll see. We just saw brood, not just, but kind of just saw brood 5 in the red here in the eastern half of the state in 2016. And then next to it, for our part of the state, we saw brood 8 in 2019. And then brood 14 down here in the green, not going to see them until 2025. The area of the light blue that you see does not get any brood cicadas. It only gets the seasonal or dog days cicadas. And now there is something very curious about this. And you all know how I roll. Here's our good old relief map of Ohio. Next to it, what do you see?
Well, clearly there's a pattern, but Dawn, I'm sure you understand the relief map better than I do.
Let me go to the next slide. Thank you. Brood 10, and I've drawn some lines here. Brood 10 only shows up for us at this particular time in the area where we had the most flattening of land by the glaciers. If you see this, like if you see this fork here, this thing that looks like a fork.
Yeah.
That's the Scioto and the Olentangy, and then down here is the Big Darby where it enters it. Over here, just to the left of the X, that's for reference, that's Bell Fountain, and about where the X is, that's about where Springfield is. So brood X, the way we're seeing it now, is not emerging past this red line, which is where, as we discussed in previous sessions, the Hocking Hills start. And if you look over here, and I didn't draw a line for it on the map on the left, that brood 8 from 2019, the purple, that's up in here where we've discussed before the Allegheny Plateau starts heading into the Allegheny Mountains in Pennsylvania. That whole brood, its habits were formed by a completely different set of geological circumstances. And the same with brood 14 down here. We didn't have quite as much flattening from the glaciers down here in this area, and not at all in this area. It had stopped right here where the red line intersects with the green. So once again, we see that the glaciers have had an effect. And the glaciers started the 17-year cicadas on the pattern that they're on now, based on their moving south and receding north back and forth. They did this on what is, geologically speaking, a relatively regular time frame, and that's why it's 17 years and not 22 years or 11 years or 9 years or something. It's because of that glacial activity back and forth.
So are all of those broods, those are all 17-year broods, Don?
Let me double check. I don't want to misspeak myself. Let me look here. I should have marked this place in my book. Yes, those are all 17s.
Okay.
So, Dawn, do they not ever move very far from where they're born then?
No, they do not.
Because other insects we see, travel across areas, but that's not the case with the cicadas then.
No, and their lifespan is very short. Their emission once they emerge is a single mission, and no, they're not around for very long. So no, they do not. Again, if we I'm going to go back to something here because you bring up a good point. Here is that map of the Brood X range, and that plus New England and a portion of New York State and a portion of lower Iowa, northern Nebraska, and northern Missouri, that's all Brood X, the different Brood X families. The 13-year brood cicadas is all strictly Illinois, Missouri, Tennessee, Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, a little bit of Georgia, a little bit of North and South Carolina. So they are more south and west. There are no 13-year cicada broods in our area, except for there have been a couple of reported cases in farthest southwest Ohio and a couple across the river in Kentucky. But other than that, like West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, the New England states, Michigan, Indiana, no 13-year cicadas. So their ranges are pretty much separate.
I wonder if climate change will have some kind of effect on that, though.
I don't know. I mean, that's a very good question. And climate change's effect on a lot of things is a very good question.
Right.
Especially since for the brood 10 and pretty much the other 17-year locusts, they are all in, with the exception of Wisconsin, they are all in Great Lakes states. And Great Lakes is seeing a lot of problems already related to climate change and agricultural practices.
So I see how this, and I think it's really interesting how the geology affected that, but why or how? Like, you know what I mean? Why? What effect did that have on it? The glacier.
What my limited knowledge about that was that they might try to emerge in an area and come to the surface and, find out there's solid ice above them. So they tunnel back down until there wasn't any.
I see. Huh.
and then they'd come up again like years later and, hey, there's no more ice and it's warmer and, oh, look, there's trees. Let's go.
Yeah, that makes
Interesting.
Okay, so it looks like there's somebody else in the lobby. Oh, Christie is in the lobby. Hi, Christie. Christie, you there?
Hi, I'm here.
Hi. All finished with class?
No, that I'm double tasking. That's why I have it on mute, had it on mute because I've still got my other class on the screen right now.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but
Well,
I wanna
well, we are in the middle of this, but I am recording this, so you can always watch it later, or we're probably going to redo it again in a couple weeks. So take your pick.
Great, because I'd really love to see this. Thank you for that.
Sure. Okay, I am going to continue now, and we're going to talk life cycle. So this is the life cycle of these cicadas, and I think, Amy, this will answer your one question. If we start at the green arrow, again, about March 12th or May 12th now, the nymphs emerge and go through their ecdysis, which means they climb up on a tree or on a heavy bush, and they immediately shed their old skin and they come out as an adult. As nymphs, for digging, their front legs have these crab-like claws on them. And when they come out of their shells, they don't have that anymore. They have regular legs for the front pair, plus they got the wings. And within 24 hours of coming out, they've kind of dried off. They've got their wings in operation. They start mating, and the females start oviposition, which means laying eggs. And we'll discuss how they do that. Now, the adults live for about 14 days while they're doing this mating and ovipositing. After that, they just die and their bodies fall to the bases of whatever trees or bushes they're on. And that's it for them. The eggs hatch after 2 months, and believe it or not, as soon as those eggs hatch, those nymphs, they immediately head down the tree or bush and dig tunnel into the ground. And I'll mention too, you can tell the tunnels around the bases of trees when they have emerged, because the holes are like about as big around as what would be if you poked your middle finger in the dirt. It's not a little tiny hole. It's not as big as a crawdad hole, but it's like bigger than what you'd see from a carpenter bee or something like that, or a mason bee. So anyway, the nymphs go right down into the ground, and they're equipped for digging. And as they dig, they backfill the dirt behind them, and they go through what is called 5 instars, which basically means that they are growing, so they are shedding their shell, and they've become slightly larger. So with each shed, they become larger. And what are they doing under the ground for 14 years, or for 13 or 17 years? They are feeding on the roots of those trees or bushes. They just bite into them and they suck the juices that are in them. It doesn't hurt the trees at all, but they're like leeches. They just suck the juices out of these things. They don't do it until they're dry, but they, obviously If you've seen an uprooted tree, there's plenty of roots there for them to go for. So they keep going through this process for their brood years when they finally emerge again.
So I don't know if you know this, but it's surprising to me that it doesn't hurt the trees. I wonder why it doesn't.
You know, tree roots heal pretty quick, actually, and
Okay.
you've got little teeny tiny mouths biting on them, sucking the fluids, but trees replenish their fluids from rain primarily and groundwater a lot faster than these things could ever suck it up. You know, and you got to remember, look at how many trees there are like in your neighborhood. And you're talking about this emergence for central and eastern Ohio is going to be an estimated 700,000 cicadas. So just under 1 million. And I know that sounds like a huge number, but when you know, take a square block of your neighborhood and count the trees and calculate out how many trees are in a square mile, probably. It's, you know, it's okay.
Okay,
There's not
that
going to
makes
be a lot of
sense.
damage done. Not like that anyway. Okay, so how do you tell a male from a female? Because there is a difference, and I mean there's a difference in their functions. All males do is mate with the females, and all females do is lay eggs after they're mated with. Well, here's two side by side. The female, since they oviposit, has this thing called an ovipositor, which is this long kind of pointy thing that we're going to take a closer look at in a minute, that's at the end of their abdomen that they use to lay their eggs. If you look at the male, he's stubby over here. He doesn't have that. He's got a longer abdomen for a reason, which we will talk about, but nothing like that ovipositor on the end there. Now, up in the upper left here, this is a close-up diagram of an ovipositor, and you see how it's serrated on two sides. Believe it or not, the ovipositor actually has metal in it, and it is used like a saw to pierce bark. The female, and there's a picture of it here on the bottom, cuts open slits like you see here in tree stems. They don't do this in tree trunks. They don't do it in tree limbs or branches. They only go for the stems. They make these slits, and for every slit, they'll lay 2 eggs, move up a 1/4 inch, make a slit, lay 2 more eggs, go up a 1/4 inch, make a slit, lay 2 more eggs, and they keep doing that. If they've gone the whole length of a stem, they go to another stem, and they keep doing it until they've laid all of their eggs. And again, they may have 100 or more eggs on board. Now, what does happen is the stems will often die on the trees and fall to the ground. Number one, that does not affect the ability of those eggs to hatch. And when the stems fall off, unless you're picking them all up or bagging them when you mow, they're pretty close to the base of a tree. Now this it is believed is beneficial to the trees because it is a pruning that you don't have to do that benefits future growth of the tree. There are arborists and tree experts that will try to tell you the opposite, that that's harmful for the trees, but it's been proven that it is not. Again, the caveat being, as I mentioned at the beginning of the program, if they do this on a sapling tree that, you know, typically only has 3 or 4 branches on it that are like stems, they're that skinny, it will kill it. Absolutely. All that damage will kill it. And then in the lower left, we've got a picture here actually of a female laying eggs, and you can see these little white things sticking up as little pieces of that's the bark on that stem that she's kind of pried up with the ovipositor. Okay, any questions? We ready to move forward?
I think so.
Okay, now about the songs. First of all, only the males sing. You hear that noise, that's only males trying to attract females. When you hear a like that, that's females simply clicking their wings together in response to male serenades. So there's 2 different things you hear there. Behind their wings, the males have these things called a timbal, which is their song maker. And you can see a real extreme close-up of it here on the right. It's kind of shell-shaped and has lines through it, which are actually, internally, they are ridges. And it's concave to the inside. Muscles around the front of the timbals make them vibrate, and that is amplified by their, believe it or not, totally hollow abdomen. So here's a drawing of a male, and right where this blue oval is where the timbals would be. And then circled in red, here's their abdomen. And again, with the exception of their, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. With the exception of their mating setup, if you will, their entire abdomen is empty. And as you saw in those comparison photographs between male and female, the male's abdomen is a fair bit bigger than the female's abdomen.
So what did the Indians eat that they thought was so good?
The rest of it, the upper part. And the females, they can tell the difference between a male and a female. The females do have their internal organs spread out throughout their abdomen. With the males, they're all jammed up in the thorax here.
Did they just eat the inside, or did they eat the crunchy part too?
No, the crunchy part too, from what I've read.
Okay.
And there was actually a English-born naturalist that lived somewhere in southeastern Ohio, and he had a Native American house servant, and he had him pan-sear these things for him with some particular type of sauce that wasn't explained, and apparently they were extremely good tasting once you got past the the initial, oh God, eating a bug,
I would imagine
Dawn,
they're
does
full
this
of
mean
protein.
you've never tried it?
No, I have not, and I don't plan to in the future. So, by comparison, everybody's seen, I think, in an orchestra, the timpani drums,
Yeah.
which is, I don't know which came first, the timbal or the timpani. I don't know, but they both work on the same principle. With the timpani drum, the head is struck near the edge with the felt tipped mallets, and that makes the entire head vibrate pretty fiercely. And this hollow copper shell projects the sound, projects it based on its shape pretty loudly. You don't have to really hammer on these things for them to make a lot of noise. So, again, in comparison, you've got this. It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, there is one thing that the cicadas, both male and female, have to deal with, and it will keep the males from being able to sing, and it can decimate them if it spreads quickly, and that is Massospora cicadina, and that is a fungal pathogen that only affects brood cicadas. It doesn't affect the seasonal cicadas. And this is kind of, I'm not saying it's related to this, but it's akin to the white nose fungus on bats, except for with these cicadas, it affects the ends of their abdomens, like you see here. They turn all white and fuzzy and powdery, and they shrink up and can actually fall off.
Wow.
And it is not known what causes it. They can only guess that the spread of it is through mating, because they really have male and females, or any adults have no other interaction with each other than mating. So it's something that's being watched, but again, there's not very much at all really known about it. Okay, now I want to draw.
Do
Huh?
you know how pesticides affect them?
I beg your pardon?
Pesticides, I wonder, you know.
Absolutely. Pesticides and herbicides as well.
Oh, okay.
In lawn chemicals, you know, like weed and feed. Anything that kills plants will kill birds and insects, and vice versa. All that stuff is bad. All of it. So, you know, one thing you run into there is farmers are still having their fields sprayed by ground tank or by airplane with what is basically Roundup.
Oh, gee.
And the slightest breezes spreads that mist. And if it gets on trees where cicadas are, yeah, they're all gonna die.
Hmm.
Absolutely. So I now draw your attention to an awesome phone app called Cicada Safari. And this has two functions. Number one, you can learn more about the periodical 17 and 13-year cicada emergences and their activities. Number two, which is the exciting thing really, you can help scientists track and study this year's massive Brood X emergence by recording your sightings in May and June through in-app photos and videos. and I believe you can record, like, you know, it works sort of like a lot of the other apps where it automatically through GPS knows where you're at, and you can put in what kind of tree or bush they're on and how many you see, and you can take pictures of them for the pretty colors and take videos of them doing their thing. The researchers want all that stuff as much as they can get their hands on. Cicada Safari has been around for a while, and it has been a massive help to them with previous years' emergences in other areas, being able to document those and then study that data later. Citizen science has through this app been a great help to them. So Cicada Safari, write it down.
That's cool.
It's a free app. Now, one other thing I will draw your attention to, a book, and I don't usually plug books, but Gene Christie was the person who gave the lecture at the symposium I attended on the Brood-X cicadas. And he has a book, Periodical Cicadas, the Brood-X edition. And it's published by the Ohio Geological Survey. I think I only paid $10 for it or something. And it is, let's see here, not including the credits and illustrations and all that stuff. It was, let's see, about 140 pages and extremely interesting, a very quick read. It tells you all about their biology. It tells you one by one where all the different broods emerge and when they will emerge next. It gives you the history of the different broods. It mentions talks a little bit about every person that has been a critical part about learning about them and understanding them. And I mean, like, since the mid 1700s. It lists a lot of interesting diary entries and news articles that were published over the years about them. I'll read you this. Gene Christie is a PhD. He is the dean of the School of Behavioral and Natural Sciences at Mount St. Joseph University in Cincinnati. He is the author of several books, including The Quest for the Perfect Hive and The Tears of Re, Beekeeping in Ancient Egypt, which were both published by Oxford University Press. He has researched periodical cicadas for over 45 years, believe it or not. Somebody devote that kind of time to one subject. He's published 33 papers on it and 3 books, all on periodical cicadas. So it's Gene Christie. This is an awesome book. I tore through this in like just a few days. So that's something good to pick up and read. And I did find it on Amazon.com if you're wondering. So, any quick questions? And we do mean quick because they're not going to be around long.
Don, don't they like shed their skin, or you know what I'm saying? Their what's it called? Their skeleton.
Yeah, their exoskeleton, yes.
And I mean, is there anything to do, with those, or are those dangerous? Like, do you want to get rid of them real quick? Like, I guess.
No, usually what happens is first time you get any kind of a decent wind, the wind blows it off of the tree trunks, and they just lay there, and again they just become organic matter that gets decomposed into the ground, and it's a very good source of nitrogen for the soil.
Oh, right. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So really better to just kind of leave them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Or you can brush them off to around the base of the tree where they'll do the most good.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I was so intrigued by them, I would collect them and put them in peanut butter jars. Empty peanut butter jars. I just thought they were so cool.
Oh, I actually have a few samples of them, specimens.
So, Dawn, I found the part about the larval stage with the 5 instars to be interesting because apparently that's not unique to cicadas, because butterfly larvae also go through those 5 instars.
Oh, do they? I did not know that, and I don't know.
Yeah, a little spoiler for next week.
I do not. Well, that's cool. I do not know a whole lot about butterflies, so I didn't know that.
I thought it was something that was unique to butterflies, but I learned from you today that that is not unique to butterflies. And so it sort of, brought a question in my mind because, there's many insects that have a larval stage, and it makes me wonder how many other insects besides cicadas and butterflies have 5 instars in their larval, or you use the word nymphal stage here.
Which also for me begs the question of what other insects are there who go through that larval stage underground then? If there's more than one, how many are there total?
Yeah, well, yeah, and of course, butterflies larvae aren't underground, but I'm thinking of other insects that go through a transformation like this. For example, dragonflies and damselflies that have, the nymphal stage, and wonder if they go through something like the 5 instars. So this is a much bigger conversation that you didn't intend to start, but.
Well, I do happen to know from my work with ODNR on the stream monitoring, the dragonflies and damselflies, their larval stages are actually spent in the water.
Right.
And they can spend that time in the water for up to 3 years.
Oh, that I didn't know, but we find, we do creeking and Girl Scouts, and we find their nymphs in the water.
Yeah, those and stonefly nymphs, they can spend up to 3 years in that nymphal stage in the water before they become adults.
Wow.
Other ones don't, but they do or can. And I don't know why that is. It might be something with the thyroid, because with a lot of amphibians, the thyroid controls when they change from their, their nymph stage to their adult stage. All frog legs that are, or all frog eggs that are laid in the spring don't necessarily, after being tadpoles, they don't necessarily turn into frogs in the late spring or early summer. Some of them, their thyroid says, no, you're going to stay a tadpole until next spring. You might look in some water, especially wetlands water or swamp water, and see these gigantic tadpoles. And that's what that is. Ones that are overwintering as tadpoles because their thyroids told them to.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, you'll see tadpoles that are like as big as a robin's egg, not including their tail. I've seen it quite a few times. But yeah, that's a whole different. That's a very interesting topic. I'm definitely going to have to look into that. Maybe that's a whole separate program. Does anybody else have anything? Any other questions? And I'll point out on this last picture here, if you look at this guy in between his eyes, that's not a mouth there. It's simply just where a mouth would be, I guess. But they do not have mouths. They do not eat for the 14 days that they're above ground and living. They've eaten enough for 13 or 17 years to hold them, I guess.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is. So the next time somebody is talking about it and they call them locusts.
Yeah.
That's what we did call
Yep.
them too.
Yell at them or give them a slap. Oh, we did the whole time I was growing up too. Locusts.
Yeah, everybody did, I think. Locusts are coming. I would like to request, Dawn, if you record these, that maybe you do put them on email or something, because not everybody's on Nextdoor. Like Linda's not on our Nextdoor. I don't, she's up in Cleveland, and sometimes it is so hard to find things on there. Like I'll see something and then I try to go back and find it later, and I don't know, maybe it's just my ineptness, but I can't find it again.
Well, now, let's take a little poll here. What would everybody prefer? Would you prefer it going on Nextdoor, or would you prefer getting an email? I can do either. Really.
I think the file is probably too big to email, but do you have the ability to post them on your website?
Yes, I do. I can post a link. I can post a link on the website, just like I have done some other things. Absolutely.
Because we could all get to your website.
Yeah,
that
excellent idea.
Yeah.
You know what I will do is I will create an entirely separate page within the website. And I will call it something like, program recordings or, session links or something like that. So yes, I will do.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Does anybody have anything else? Can you all see me again? Okay. I wasn't sure if I did that right. It's been a little bit. So that's about all I've got. Tomorrow, where's that schedule? I really scrambled the topics from how I had them last time. So I don't have memorized. Let's see. Come on. I've had so many computer problems this evening, and problems with the Wi-Fi not wanting to be connected, and
I have had the same, and we have, I guess, lines are down on Sawmill Road. I just saw Citizen app emergency call at Hard in Sawmill. I just said here and I got disconnected and had to log back in again.
Every time I am on Nextdoor, I see where some neighborhood is having power outages, or they're having widespread Wi-Fi problems or whatever. It's not something really that should be happening on a regular basis in a town like this. Maybe those, maybe over there on Britton Parkway, maybe those big Amazon buildings that are full of servers are like sucking all of our energy or something. Okay, well, tomorrow night, our session is the Friday Night Fossil Show, and it's the same program for those of you that saw it before, but I've got a bunch of new specimens to show that I didn't have last time. And I actually found a preservation technique for all of them that will make the ones I show actually show up better for you.
Mm.
So you'll be able to see them clearer and with more detail.
Nice. Cool.
Okay. Well, at that, everybody have a good night.